You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast. As always, Daniel Barrett here from AdWords Nerds. This week, we've got a really good one. This week's actually an interview. I know, we're getting into the whole interview space. We'll definitely be back to our usual format of me talking a bunch of gibberish about marketing at you soon. But this week, I could not pass up the opportunity to interview Dan Schwartz. If you don't know Dan Schwartz, he is the CEO and kind of mastermind behind Investor Fuse, which is a really incredible program. It kind of manages the relationship between your seller leads and you, and can do all kinds of really amazing things. Automate lots of processes, do all sorts of wild marketing things. It's a really, really cool tool. So I get into this whole process with Dan, how he started in investing, doing wholesaling. We talk about what brought Investor Fuse into the world, why he decided that was going to be the thing that he wanted to focus his time on. We talk about what's new with Investor Fuse 2.0, what that is, and what's going on. We also talk about a lot of really universal things, like Dan's phrase here, we are in an age of systems in investing and what that means and how you can use that in order to improve your own business. We talk about how you can make more money and get more deals from the exact same amount of leads just by automating a lot of your follow-up. And we talk about some of the follow-up tactics that the best investors in the world are using right now. This is a value-packed, amazing interview. And by the way, just outside of that, Dan is a fascinating guy, a really, really interesting guy. One of these people that's incredible at analyzing his own life, figuring out where the highest points of impact are going to be, and then optimizing everything he does around that. He's one of my favorite people in the real estate investing community, and I can't wait for you to hear this interview. So check it out, and I will be back at the end of the episode here. So without any further ado, here is my interview with Dan Schwartz from Investor Fuse. All right, everybody. Dan Barrett here, as always, and I'm here with Daniel Schwartz. So let me ask you, so one of the biggest things that I've noticed, right, working with, hundreds of investors at this point, right, is that the difference in success levels between investors that have a very consistent and systematic follow-up process and investors who mostly handle it as it comes, it's just night and day, right? Like I can give two investors the exact same leads at the exact same time, and one investor will turn that into deals all day, and one investor will just really struggle. And what I'll typically hear from people is that, if they're struggling, they're having trouble getting the leads on the phone. They're having trouble getting a response. And I'm always like, well, what does your follow-up system look like, right? Like how often are you reaching out? How many channels are you reaching out on? What does that reach out look like? What's your system? What's your numbers? And usually people are struggling. They don't know that because they don't have a system. And so they can't manage that system. So follow-up's like a huge area of inquiry for me. It's something that I'm not great at because it's not, I'm not an investor. I've never had to do that, right? But you guys are kind of like, you're in this really amazing spot where you can look at, in a systematic way, like, what works for investors in this position? What actually changes the outcome when you slot it into the system, right? So for you guys, specifically on follow-up, what are some tips or pointers you would give investors to this whole kind of 80-20 idea of what are the things they can change that are going to have the highest leverage for them in terms of turning their marketing spend into deals?
Love it. So we have a book that we wrote about
You have a downloadable for literally everything, which I also love.
Yes.
Okay, so what is this? And this
It's called
Google this one or no?
Yep. It's just on it's the main call to action on our website, investorfuse.com. 10 commandments of real estate lead management. And I can give you just a teaser. It's a really, really well-written book that our whole team kind of pitched in on, mainly Alan. But we really, after working with 500 plus companies, really at this point, thousands of companies, because before that I was doing Podio, you start to notice the commonalities between the most successful people. And so we kind of distilled that into 10 commonalities and put that in the book. So first thing is you need to understand that your income literally comes from following up. I would argue that all of your income, like even the person that wants to sell right now, as soon as you get them on the phone, requires a degree of follow-up in order to transact. So without a process in place for leads and home, like seller leads or buyers leads coming in at scale, like high volume amounts of leads, without a process in place, you're losing money every day. So I think it's important for owners to realize the importance of follow-up and not to treat it like something that you can just put on the spreadsheet and you'll figure it out. And I was in that point because you don't really care about systems. You just want to make money. And I totally get that. I hear you on that. However, you're going to make money. And then right after that, you're going to realize how important it is to actually, if you want to scale this and make this predictable so you're not broke the second you close a deal, you need to automate this whole follow-up process with house leads, because nobody wants to sell right away. Typically, it's a multi-month, multi-year process that you can't use spreadsheets to fully automate. So that's just the first thing, is just understand the importance of follow-up. So the things that you should do to really hone in your follow-up systems is, one, to make sure that you outsource your lead qualification. The most important thing you can be doing is having someone else take in all of your calls and do that initial qualification to determine, one, if there's a house that's actually needs to get sold, what the motivation level is, and the basic data that's required to get back to them. You don't want to be doing all of that ever. Ask me how I know. You burn out really quickly and you just don't do a good job. So automating your lead qualification or outsourcing it is the biggest part of this whole process. That's the one first part of the funnel that gets broken the most. And when you use a dedicated person or company, then you're going to make sure that every single call is getting answered. That's another important thing, is like answer your phone. Like make sure these people that are responding to your marketing messages you're actually getting a hold of them. Also, when someone submits a lead online, you respond within the first 5 minutes. I wonder if that truth is actually less than 5 minutes. The 5-minute thing is like what is the rule that's been thrown around a lot because of the study that was done a couple years ago. But if you get back to your lead within 5 minutes, your chances of closing that deal go up by like 90%.
Yes. And I have seen this in practice so many times. And in fact, you and I are both big Perry Marshall fans, I think, right? You're Perry Marshall.
Oh yeah. I just ordered a shirt. I ordered an 20 shirt.
Really?
Yeah. I can't wait to
it's
get
like
that.
20% of the shirt covers 80% of your body, and the rest is not there.
It's just a big fractal.
Yeah, he's like, he's a really interesting dude. And so I saw him recently. I went to like a seminar he did in Connecticut, and he was talking about, not about real estate, but he was talking about like the time value of leads, and how the time value of leads is an 80-20 curve. And it's like the moment that a lead opts in, that lead is at 100% value. And he's like, 2 minutes from then, it's not at like 90% value, it's at like 50% value. And then like 30 minutes from then, it's at like 1% of the value of the lead, right? And you just realize, it's like, I've talked to so many people who are like, well, Dan, whatever, I like you, but these leads aren't any good. And I'm like, wow, like I'm I'm really just terrible. Like I get very personally upset because, people pay me money to get a certain result. And I always want to we do a postmortem on every client to figure out if it didn't go well. Like I want to know why it didn't go well and I want to get better. Right. And so many times I've got, they're like, the leads aren't any good. I'm like, oh my God, so what do they say when you follow up? And they're like, well, when I followed up a day later. And I'm like, yeah, like the value of the lead is essentially zero. I mean, it's not zero because you can get that person long-term, but you are losing a huge amount of the value in that, like you said, 5 minutes before you follow up. So like when you're working with clients, is the best thing to do to just hire a person, put them in your office, put them on the phone? Do you guys do that online, like as part of like a form? Like what's the best way to qualify leads?
The best way to qualify leads is there's a lot of services out there that do like investor friendly lead answering. Because of how important this is, there are companies that are popping up that just do this for you. So if you don't hire an in-house office manager to do that, then you can use a company like Call Porter to do that for you, and they'll input the data into your CRM on your behalf. And that's just one of those things that's totally worth the money, because it'll allow you to focus on, like I said, building engines and prioritizing those motivated leads over all of the leads coming in. So using call answering services, I recommend not using PatLive because they're a general answering service. You want to use the real estate friendly answering services. Call Porter, I think 2019 is going to be a big year for them. I was going to create that service if no company showed up, but they showed up. So that's how important I think it is. Another important thing is the frequency at which you follow up. This stuff is so boring, but it's just so essential. So the stat is always follow up at least 7 times. Your reps have a 95% chance of making contact within 7 touch points. So that sounds great. But if you don't use a system to automatically remind you to do that, or have a system that automatically does that for you, you're just not going to do it. You're not going to, or you're going to outsource it, and then that person's going to fail because it's just too much getting thrown at you, and every seller lead has a different scenario.
Yeah, I think that's so huge, because I think so many people think, well, this person filled out my form or whatever they did, right? And I called them and I left a message and they didn't call me back. So they're not motivated, right? That's like the jump. It's like, they're not motivated. They're not a seller. And I'm like, my mom leaves me voicemails and I don't call her back. And I love my mom. You know what I mean? Like yeah. The onus is on you as the investor to do that follow-up. And I think that it's so huge, but people don't think about it that way.
Yeah. And then just from a systems and process standpoint, another big thing is to always have a next action. So every time you're done corresponding with an opportunity, assign a next action to occur. And make sure you use a system like InvestorFuse that forces you to choose the next action so that you don't forget about that lead. And
so break that down a little bit. Like, what do you mean by that?
When you're done with a conversation, are you going on an appointment? Are you scheduling a reminder to follow up with them in the future? Are you going to create the offer right then and there? Are you going to assign someone else to create the offer right then and there? If you don't actually program in that action step, then it's just going to sliver through the cracks like every other lead. And this is something that I learned the hard way. So what we did, and sort of my whole product mission with, even when we were doing this on Podio, is to force people to choose the next action. And it was hard to do that in Podio. It's because there's workarounds where you can avoid that. But with the new system, which we're coming out with now, it forces you to choose the next action and take one action at a time so that you really can't mess up or lose track of leads. And it's just crucial.
I mean, that's so huge, man. Because even with AdWords Nerds, like, so obviously we're not investors, but we use backend systems to manage our own clients. And it's very easy to, if you don't set that next step, someone's kind of in the system, but at that point they're kind of invisible, right? No one sees, you need some kind of process for making sure those people don't get lost. I think that's completely huge. So you mentioned this. So talk about So you guys made the decision, right? Because of, I'm assuming some of the limitations of Podio to essentially build your own thing. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like, why did you make that decision? And then what did you guys end up turning Investor Fuse into?
Yeah. So Podio, the system itself is actually designed for project management. You can think of, if you're familiar with Trello, it's a project management tool that mainly agencies use, marketing agencies, development agencies. And for many years, investors took that and warped it into a lead management system. So there's always been that underlying, this doesn't really quite fit, but we're going to deal with it because there's nothing else. It wasn't ever designed for real estate investors. We just made it so. That really we started to feel that because everybody would complain about how complex it is, despite us trying to make it as simple as possible. We couldn't control the system. It's not our platform. So in order to scale this solution properly, we decided, man, we got to make our own thing. We need to use what we learned building Podio, think of it as a prototype, to create the thing that people actually needed, which is a simple process that they can trust. Not to mention all of the outages that would occur on Podio. So every week at this point, Podio's API just turns off. So leads stop coming into our customers' workspace. Leads just stop coming in because of Podio's outages. Really, really bad, and it's completely out of our control. So,
right. And then people, I'm sure, would come to you and say, what's up, Investor Fuse? What did you guys do? And you're just kind of like,
public shaming occurred a lot.
I'm sure it does. Yeah.
So we decided, basically, listen, we are just going to reinvest everything into building the thing that we should have probably built from day one, but we didn't know that this was going to be the path that we were going to go on, right? So fate would have it that we're going to just build our own system. And it started with at 2 a.m. I woke up out of bed with this vision of creating like a 1-page action-based system that doesn't look or feel anything like a CRM. We're not even going to call it a CRM, actually. We're going to invent a new word.
Do you know what the word is?
We're toying with a couple ones. DLM is one of them, a digital lead manager, because it functions more as like a bot, like an assistant that tells you what to do conversationally, versus like a database that you have to log into and you have to figure out, like, what do I click? Like, okay, I have to go to seller leads. I guess I should go over here, but wait, I got to go into the settings and adjust this. There's none of that thinking involved. And we really put a lot of time and energy into figuring out an interface that would allow for that level of simplification. And that's what we built. And right now it's in beta. And it's so slick that every time I watch a demo, it gets better every single week. I'm just blown away that we were able to pull this off in a year. Granted, we spent everything we got to make it happen. Had to raise some money in the process, but it is a worthwhile effort that I think is going to benefit the entire industry. And really, it's going to turn Investor Fuse into the go-to hub for all incoming leads. So finally, lead gen services like you guys will have like a system that they can trust. Their clients are going to make money from the leads you're generating, which is the biggest complaint that you guys have. Just like, you're in control of generating the lead, but you have no control over what they do with it after that. And so that's the piece that we're honing in on to automate and simplify as much as possible. And another great benefit of having it so simple and having it so that you really can't mess it up, it tells you what to do step by step, is that the data you get is going to be super accurate. You're going to know what campaign it came from. You're going to have the lead response data. You're going to know how fast people got back to them. You're going to know who on your team has the most results. You're going to know, how many appointments were scheduled from that, what the ratio of appointments to close deals was. You're going to have all of these operational metrics that are going to be completely accurate as long as your team's heart is still beating, and still showing up to work. So I'm pumped to be able to do like another study where we can release like new metrics around like it takes an average of 11 attempts in order for you to get a deal, not this Harvard Business Review study. So I want to talk about like how we can like merge our data together. And we've been having this conversation to create like new industry standards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a huge opportunity to actually look at that stuff at scale, right? Like it's one of the things I always say, like, it's very hard to find large companies that deal with the number of data points that we have. There are a few, but like mostly it's like there are individuals, and individuals both don't really share their data with the community, right? Because they've got their own thing. I don't expect anyone to share their secret sauce with everyone else. And then two, just the fact that it works for you doesn't mean it works for everyone, right? People in different housing markets, whatever. You got somebody with a supernatural level of charisma like us, who knows, just unreal. And, that skews the numbers, right? But it's like when you start to look at lots of people over time, that's when you start to see those trends. And yeah, I just want to use that as much as possible and do cool stuff with it.
Are you an investor who wants to dominate your local market? Do you want more leads and deals online? Then download your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint, absolutely free at www.adwordsnerds.com/gift. What are you waiting for? Go to www.adwordsnerds.com/gift right now to get your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint.
The thing that's so interesting to me about what you guys are doing, and I think the thing that makes you really unique in that space, is you are trying to simplify it down, right? Like I think the way that most companies think about CRMs or backend systems or whatever, it's like just throw more stuff at it. Like we use the CRM for our agency and I kind of hate it. And it's like it's like everything, right? It's like they want to do everything. There's everything in there. It does everything. And in reality, because you know who your clients are, you can make just the stuff that matters and put it right up front. So they don't have to worry about, just like you said, like handcrafting Podio into some, shape it was never meant to be in, right? It can just be simple from the beginning. And I think it's much harder to do than people think it is.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How's the podcast going?
It's been interesting, man. It's been good. I like doing it, and it's not got a huge listenership, but one of the things that I've noticed, just to kind of like pull back the curtains on, like if anyone's ever curious about like what marketing AdWords nerds is like, the thing that we really notice is like people that listen to the podcast, they close at like 2 or 3 times the percentage of everyone else, right? So it's like for me, it's when you get to a certain point in the investing space, it's very hard to just keep spending more money on ads or, it's like we kind of spend all we can really spend and still have decent targeting. And so for me, it's more about going deeper. So like, with the REI Marketing Nerds Facebook group or doing the podcast, it's just like you said, it's essentially a form of following up with people, just staying in touch with them, like continuously providing value. And like, now when people come to us, it's no longer like I show you an ad and we try to get you on the phone and then I have to convince you to hire us. Like when people get on the phone, they've been like, I've been in your group for a year. I've been listening to your podcast. I've been saving up money to hire you. Right. And I'm like, okay, that's like a much better situation for us to be in. Cause we really try not to ever convince anybody of anything. It's like, you're either right to work with us and it's awesome or it isn't. So I think it's been really good that way. But I think if you look at it traditionally, like, I don't have like the top podcast in the world, but I like doing it. So it's fun enough. And the effect has definitely been positive for sure.
Yeah. It's just a great platform to hash your ideas out loud that you wouldn't otherwise have that ability to.
Yeah.
And the feedback you get is, relatively real time. So it's, we just launched a podcast too. It's been fun having that platform.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. I dig it. And I just like talking better than I like writing, but like, I find it much easier to do this than I do like, write like long form copy or something. So it is much more
it's your $10,000 per hour zone.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see if I get up to 10. I don't know if I'm at 10K an hour yet. My quality is going to be higher than that, but it's been interesting. Like I had someone who's like a client, like be like, oh, I listened to your podcast and, I totally disagree with you and like XYZ. And we got into like a deep conversation about it. Right. And I was like, that's awesome. Like I wouldn't have had that conversation. I wouldn't have known that guy's thoughts. So it allows me to talk to a lot of people at scale, which is what it's always about.
Hey, I just need to say a real quick inspirational thing.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here talking about how the power of 80-20 can make you $10,000 per hour. Jeff Bezos in 2018 has made on average $231,000 per minute. Per minute.
Wow. So if you guys want to start up a GoFundMe to help Jeff Bezos pay his bills, the address is, that's ridiculous, man. That's completely ridiculous. I want to know. So, I won't keep you forever because I know you're busy and we got stuff to do. But I want to know. So we're both big fans of this whole 80-20 thing. You and I will geek out a lot about lifestyle design and trying to really handcraft our lives. And I think you're a really good example of that. Actually, Joe McCall is a great example of that. Because I did work with Joe McCall and I was working harder than he was. He was like in Europe with his family, just doing whatever. And I'm, busting my butt on his AdWords campaigns. And he has systems. So I want to know, like, how have you thought through that whole kind of 80-20 lifestyle design thing? How do you think through that in your personal life? Like, how do you use that outside your business to kind of drive how you spend the rest of your time, or even make your long-term business decisions, I guess?
Yeah. So I subconsciously make second decisions based around the essence of the 80-20 principle, just subconsciously. Examples of this, I think this is my like unique skill set or whatever. I can't really quite describe how I'm able to do this, but I'm able to see the matrix a little bit. So just simple stuff. Like we were in line on a team retreat and we went to this event at a stadium and there was a line at the Chick-fil-A to get lunch. And the line was like wrapping all the way around the stadium, pretty much, and inside of the stadium. And I was just like, well, there's 100% chance that I'm not going to wait in this line. And the first thing that thought to me was just like, I'll just go on Postmates and order Chick-fil-A on Postmates and they'll deliver it directly to me and I will bypass this whole line. Why isn't anyone else doing this? I did that. And 15 minutes later, a Chick-fil-A guy came with a bag of Chick-fil-A. And I remember getting that and just like looking at everybody in line and just like, what makes me able to see that solution that they can't? So just like, I don't have like routine really in my life or structures necessarily. I just am able to make those decisions. I'm really good at, because of how lazy I am, figuring out solutions and high level strategies that or high level ways to execute things that require minimum time or effort to create maximum output. Even in high school, I was like that. I got great grades with the least amount of work possible.
But I learned nothing, is what I want to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so I'm curious. So like, do you have a really clear, so I know you said like, you don't have a lot of structure in your life, which is interesting to me. Because I tend to try to build structure into my life and then I just don't do it. And then I feel guilty about it. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, like, do you have a real clear sense of, like, if I was going to say to you, like, Dan, like, what are your like priorities in life? Do you have a clear sense of like, okay, like here's how things rank to me and I'm going to prioritize the things that are most important over things that aren't? Is that kind of like the guiding principle you use to make those decisions? Actually,
no. It is more so now than it used to be. I just turned 30, spent most of my 20s, touring and traveling. And I'm still doing that in a sense. For the past 3 months, I've been staying at Airbnbs and hotels and family and friends places. So it's been a very unstructured lifestyle, yet I'm still able to operate at a pretty high level every day. I know that that is my biggest weakness right now, is not having a routine. In fact, they say that having a routine and having structure is the key to freedom, not the antithesis of it. So I'm leaning into that, actually. So I just moved to Austin, staying in an Airbnb right now, but I'm looking at a place and really I want to experiment with structure and routine so that I can have more flow and creativity on a day-to-day basis. So we were just talking right before this. I really want to structure my lifestyle around flow and creating music because I want to see how that will affect my thinking and how that will impact the business. So I don't recommend an unstructured lifestyle. It's just kind of how it worked out for me. Also, it makes dating really hard. I'm single. So when you're bouncing around and not staying in any place for longer than 5 days, I basically just haven't been dating because of that. It's just like, I don't want to have to go through all this. I'm leaving in 5 days. So it's sort of created all these limiting beliefs. So I think routine is important, and I'm going to test that out and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I tell you what, you could always just have kids and then it ruins all the other stuff for you.
That's a forcing function for structure. Yeah.
Like, so I adopted 3 kids. I'm just going to see how it goes. And I don't know. I'll get rid of them if I don't like it.
Maybe I should get a dog or something. That would be
well, that's a nice, it's a nice limitation to have because you can get over it if you need to, but it's a being that relies on you. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, man. I think we both have a lot of personality traits that are pretty similar, and it's a real fine balance because like I need routine in my life, but I also rebel against it if you give me too much, right? So it's kind of like structure, but not too structured. So it'll be interesting. Well, let me get, because you're obviously a very thoughtful guy. What's something you've read or someone you listened to or gotten into lately that's had kind of an impact on you? Because I've kind of seen a little bit of the evolution of the way you kind of figure this stuff over time, and you've done a lot of experimentation, made a lot of changes. So what's something recently for you that's had an impact on you, positive, negative, or
what I'm tinkering with the most in my brain right now is the concept of OKRs, objectives and key results.
Yeah.
I just started reading the book, Measure What Matters, which just got released this year.
Yep.
And I like it better than KPIs, which is key performance indicators. Mm-hmm. It's just more simple and intuitive. And it's basically, for those who aren't familiar, it's the goal setting strategy that companies like Google employ to rally the entire team around key objectives, and then the key results that, like the direction you're going, and then the how you're going to go there. And the way you structure it is very intuitive in that everybody working on a project know exactly how their work impacts the overall company objectives. And you can like see it statistically on if you're using software like WeekDone, which I'm looking into now. So, now that I have a real software company and we have our own standalone system, I am leaning into really diving in and creating a team that is way more aligned around these objectives and key results. Because not having that is a big cause for tension and disorganization and lack of productivity. And you kind of find that out the hard way. So I would recommend everybody read this book, Measure What Matters. Even if you're just starting out, it's good to learn these high level things so that you can sort of bake that in from day one without having to go through the mistakes that Dan and I made. So read Measure What Matters. Yeah, OKRs, I think, are the new KPIs.
Yeah, it's great. I'm so glad you said that, man, because we literally January, we roll out OKRs to our team, which is really fascinating. I read the same book and really loved it. I've been messing around with them for just my personal life.
I should do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like it a lot. I think it works best with teams. I mean, I think for me personally, like I had like an OKR board for like my, all the stuff I was working on. And it was like a little too much structure, right? So I took pieces of it that I kept, but for the team, I think it's incredible because it's just like you said, there's a clear goal that everyone can pull towards. And for me, the biggest thing was being able, even for me, like not even for the team, but for me, I have so many ideas to be able to be like, which of these affects my objective, right? It's like, because otherwise I'll be like, I'll do this and I'll do this and do this. And they're all kind of spread out. And it's like, no, it's like, forces you to focus on stuff that has the impact that you want. So yeah, let me know, man. I'm very curious how it goes for you guys. Yeah, I'm very interested. We just grew. We're a team of 9 now, and it's like, I know you know this. But it's like you start to manage a team, and it gets beyond like 4 people, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden, like it's a very different experience, like working with all these different people and keeping everyone on the same task, and it can be challenging, but I don't think it has to be complicated. I think it can be pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, you got to try to keep it as simple as possible. My coach said that up to like 25 employees is the hardest it ever gets to run a company. And after that, like once you get to 50, actually your life gets a lot easier because you're just working with managers, and ideally you're hiring A players that just run the show for you. And on that note, a little final thought. I know a lot of people listening to this may be newer to the business, and this high level talk about systemizing your business and outsourcing might seem like good in theory, but there might be some limiting beliefs around your lack of ability to do this. Not only, I got to say, like, if I can do it, you can do it. But really, you need to understand that when you're creating a system, like a business system, and plugging someone else into it, your value is the fact that you made that happen. So a lot of people think that they don't have value if they just, like, for instance, Joe McCall will do this thing where he learns a new strategy. So then he hires someone to learn that strategy and just do it for him. And some might argue, like, well, how can he do that? Like, he's not doing anything. What's the value? The value is that he understands the market need. He understood that the system is needed. He acquired the resources in which to learn and execute the system. And then he provided that opportunity to someone for them to actually have meaning and work on something that matters for them. And that in itself is valuable. And I think it's a psychological shift that you have to go through when you are working on your business versus in it. Your value is providing the system and finding a market and dollars and acquiring the knowledge and know-how. That is your highest value. And I think you shouldn't have any timidness around outsourcing or hiring or plugging people into these systems, because you do have value. You're smart enough to know that that's actually the most important thing, is being the owner of the system and bringing all the pieces together. So don't feel bad if you're starting out day one and you start outsourcing everything right away. I think that's great. Like, leading people is the most important skill set you can have, and you just have to jump in and do it. So hire that first person and work the system, and you'll find out how, step by step, it's possible to systemize and automate most of your business.
Well, so that's an amazing way to end it. So if people want to follow you online and they want to learn more about InvestorFuse, like how should they find you? How should they reach out to you?
InvestorFuse.com has a wealth of knowledge about all the stuff that we've been talking about, as well as some real estate strategy on the blog, as well as that 10 Commandments blog post that I told you about, or the ebook about the 10 Commandments of lead management. If you want to reach out to me personally, Dan@InvestorFuse.com, and just let me know what questions you have or how I can help serve you, and I'll get back to you, or we can book a call and talk from there.
Cool, man. Yeah, and if you guys are listening to this, you're an investor, I highly recommend that you check out InvestorFuse. It's a really incredible piece of work, and we didn't even scratch the surface of all the weird stuff that it does. I mean, at this point, I feel like it can come to your house and like massage your shoulders if you feel stressed out. It's pretty rad.
It's not out yet though, so it's still in beta. We're going to roll out the system publicly in Q1 of 2019, where you can just
coming up.
Sign up for it. So,
all right, it's coming up, man. I'm so excited for that. Beta. So like if someone they want to get in on the beta, should they just go and like drop their email somewhere? Are you going to notify people?
Shoot us an email. It might take a couple of weeks to get you in, but if you desperately want to get in, shoot us an email and we'll see what we can do.
All right. So if you guys are listening to this and you're curious, which I recommend that you be curious, drop them an email, let them know. Dan, thank you so much, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And you're, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating people in real estate today. So I really appreciate you coming on and being my silent partner on this Facebook Live, apparently.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, people on the podcast will definitely hear you, and you don't have to apologize because it's definitely my fault, not yours. But yeah, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I want to come on and do one of those day drinking lives with you.
We should. It's at 2 p.m., so it's 15 minutes from now. I don't have a beer. I don't have a beer on next today. I'm gonna try to that's like my New Year's resolution is bring a beer on my weekly show because I used to do that every week, and then I got to the point where I was like, I can't drink even a fifth of a beer in the middle of the day. I just lose it. You know what I mean? It's not good for me. So we'll see. I'll work much harder on that for you.
Awesome.
All right, man. Have a great rest of your day, Dan. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Cheers, buddy. All right, REI Marketing Nerds, I hope you got a ton of value out of that interview with Dan Schwartz. Man, I had such a good time talking to that dude, and I learned so much every time we chat. As always, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I would love it if you got some value out of this episode. If you go on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, just give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave us a review. That helps other people find the podcast, and I really appreciate it. And as always, you can find me at the REI Marketing Nerds Facebook group. You can go to adwordsnerds.com/group. It'll take you right there, adwordsnerds.com/group. There's a whole bunch of people on Facebook talking about marketing, real estate investing, just really, really good group of people. And you can find show notes for this episode, links to everything that we talked about, all that good stuff, plus all our past episodes at adwordsnerds.com/podcast. That's adwordsnerds.com/podcast. I hope you are having an awesome week, and I will be talking to you again soon. And thank you. Cheers.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.